What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens episode review. Today, guys, we are going to be going over episode 69 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, the first review that I'm doing for the new arc, as last episode, I actually skipped the review of last episode because of it being a recap episode, and I mentioned a couple episodes ago that I am not going to be doing reviews for recap episodes. So, this is actually my official first review for the brand new arc of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, Arc 6, the Goha Corporation arc, or it's some name like that. I can't remember the exact name of it. So I'm very excited to get into this review with you guys. So without further ado, let's not waste any more time and let's jump right into it. So, generally speaking, what were my thoughts on episode 69 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens? Well, I thought it was a interesting episode, to say the least. It was definitely more on the weirder side of Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens. One of the weirdest episodes we have gotten in the show so far, which is saying something, because we've gotten quite a bit of weird episodes in Yu-Gi-Oh! Sevens, but that's to be expected with this show. This show, it's an experience, to say the least. So, the episode starts off with there being a problem at Goha Corporation, as apparently the duel system is malfunctioning, and because Nail isn't there to do it, because obviously he quit Goha Corporation and that was his job, literally the entire building and the entire people that are working there are in complete panic right now. They don't know what to do because this is something that they don't do because, let's be honest, they're incompetent like every other adult. I think of like Top a Hexagon and Double Six. Like, they literally do not know how to do their jobs right, because it takes Yuga, who is now in his new Goha getup. We see him wearing the mask and the blue jacket with the nice gray vest on that has the Goha emblem on it, and he comes in, uses his new road, and was able to stop the duel malfunctioning, which, if it did not get stopped, everyone's duel accounts would be suspended. So Yuga was able to stop it from malfunctioning. Everyone starts praising him, and Yuga just kind of laughs it off. And then we see Yuo just watching over this entire thing that's going on, and even kind of having like a little inner monologue with himself, because he's still surprised about Yuga wanting to take the job at Goha Corporation. Because remember, Yuo lost in the last arc. He lost the battle between him and the rest of the crew, but one of the bets that was made during this, or one of the arrangements, I should say, it wasn't really a bet, was that if they ended up winning, if the presidents ended up winning, aka Yuo won, then Yuga was forced to have to work at Goha Corporation. Well, Yuga's team won, but Yuga decided to still work at Goha Corporation, which was interesting as an exchange to let the other presidents get their roles back. And speaking of the other 5 presidents, it seems like they're going to be going back up to space, so that probably means that we aren't going to be seeing the other presidents for a while, which I'm completely fine with. You know, that's 5 characters that we're getting rid of for the time being to allow other characters to come back, which I do believe that's going to happen, that we're going to be seeing some reoccurring characters. Like, I think Metsubora will come back, I think Khan will come back, because of the sole fact that we know that they're going to get fusion monsters, so more than likely that's their way to show them that they're going to be back in the front line as duelists, since obviously in the last arc, they really didn't do anything. In fact, I think they only appeared one time, which was in the final episode, just overlooking the duel between Yuga and the Luke Man. So the 5 presidents decided to go back to space. They're a little bit worried about leaving Yuo behind, because Yuo sticks at Goha Corporation, and that's understandable. After the whole crap that Yuo ended up doing in the last arc, I can understand why they're worried, but it just seems like for what is going on right now, it seems like they have to try to trust Yuga and what he's doing right now, because with them having to go back up into space, there's nothing really that they can do to kind of stop Yuo, so they essentially have to rely on Yuga if something goes wrong to stop Yuo from what he's doing. And going back to Yuga, we actually see a flashback scene where he actually pays a visit to Nail, since he actually wants him to come back to Goha Corporation, since, you know, Yuga and his team won, and he ended up resigning after the duel with Asana. But Nail says no, he does not want to go back to Goha Corporation. He has no interest whatsoever to actually go back to, Goha Corporation, which I respect that, and I'm very glad that they decided to keep Nail out of being part of Goha Corporation, because I feel like there's a lot of room to grow with Nail by making him just have to try and follow his own path. But I will say, though, there was one thing I did not like about that flashback scene, and that was the fact that Sebastian is back. Remember, the last time we saw Nail and Sebastian was in that Nail Asana episode, and we saw Sebastian literally kill himself because he couldn't be with Nail because he was a part of Goha. And literally in the next time we see Nail, he is literally back with him, which to me is completely stupid. Why in the hell is this character back? You just now ruined that scene because of the fact that literally in the next time we saw Nail, he's literally back and just is in full condition again, because apparently Yugioh was able to rebuild him, which is kind of hilarious. Nail rebuilt him the last time, and now Yugioh is the one that rebuilt him. So he's gotten rebuilt twice in a short span after he had died. So I feel like they shouldn't have just killed Sebastian off, because it just made no sense if he was just gonna literally appear in the next time we saw Nail. And yeah, I know, this is Sevens, it's supposed to be more of a comedic show, not a more sad, darker show, but that's the point of a death scene. A death scene is supposed to be sad. If you don't want to have those elements in it, don't even mess with it. Like, maybe something you could have done is, if you did not want Sebastian to be dead going into this flashback, don't freaking kill him off. I understand you're trying to feel bad for Nail because he essentially lost the only friend he had left, but literally in the next shot we see, it literally retconned that entire scene, because, again, he's back and better than ever. Like, he looks completely fine. So I don't understand what in the world was the point of that. Either don't kill him off, or if you have to kill him off, make it a little bit longer. Let us see Nail grow by himself and have to try to find a new purpose. And maybe when he found that new purpose, he could come back to Goha Corporation and rebuild Sebastian himself, and to show him that he now has a new purpose in life, and that's where you can continue on from that. But they didn't end up doing that, which I was a little bit disappointed in. But that's essentially the biggest things to point out, other than the fact that it was mentioned in that flashback that it's not just going to be Yugioh that's going to work at Goha Corporation, it's everyone, which we saw that in the preview, because we saw Roman working in the kitchen, and I think we also saw Luke at his office. So we knew that they were going to be working at Goha Corporation, but in the terms of this whole episode, like if you didn't even watch the preview, this was the initial hint that everyone was going to be working at Goha Corporation. In fact, it's not even a hint, he blatantly said it, which is something that he did not mention to Yugioh at the end of that episode, I think it was 67, where he said he was going to work at Goha Corporation. It wasn't just him. Everyone was going to work at Goha Corporation. And even in the last episode, too, the recap episode, we saw that Mimi got her role back. So that's pretty cool as well. So not only is Yugioh and the crew going to be working there, but also Mimi is going to get her spot back, which maybe that means she's going to be more relevant going into this arc as well, which is going to be cool to see. But that's essentially that whole flashback scene that we got with Yugioh and Nail. And then the final thing that I want to talk about in regards to Yugioh was a line that he said, which was essentially his last line for the episode, and it was, now that Yugioh and the crew is working at Goha Corporation, it's the beginning of the end for Rush Duels, which was a line I did not know if they were going to do or not. After the last episode where they were seeming like they were going to try and redeem Yugioh, it doesn't look like that was the case. I always thought that when it came to that scene, because I know a lot of people had jumped the gun and said, oh, that was a complete redemption scene for you, and I absolutely hate it. And although I agree to some degree it was a redemption, I feel like they were trying to hint that he wasn't going to be fully redeemed with that flashback that he kept getting of him dueling against some unknown character in a flashback. So because of that, I feel like that's going to make Yugioh still a villain. In fact, I have a suspicion, and people might not like that I'm going to say this, but I do think that Yugioh, to some degree, is somewhat brainwashed. I really do believe it. After the last episode, and we saw, Yugioh having a great time with his siblings, I feel like that's really the real Yugioh. I feel like that's what his actual personality is, but because of this duel that he had with this unknown character, his whole mindset changed in a sense. So I feel like whoever Yugioh dueled against has made Yugioh the way he is. I don't think this is what he actually is because he's a kid after all, but because of that duel with that unknown character, he is starting to act more evil, which makes things very interesting, and that also makes me with a strong belief that Yugioh will not be the main antagonist of this arc, although I would have thought that would have been really cool if they did that, because I felt like, although you could say that Yugioh was the main antagonist of the last arc, in fact, I would definitely say he was, they really didn't do too much with him, or at least to the point that I would have liked to see, because after his loss to the Luke man, he literally did nothing for the rest of the show, other than just being an observer for the whole situation that was going on. So I would have loved if he participated more, and maybe he's going to get his chance in this arc to do a little bit more, but more than likely, that unknown character that he dueled against might be playing a role in this arc, or at least I strongly do believe that, but I would like to hear your guys' thoughts on that. But that was it for the whole episode with Yugioh, because after this, we don't see him for the rest of the episode, and we just see Yuga and the crew and all that they're doing at Goha Corporation, where Yuga was riding his bike down the hallway, which is very similar to something he did in like the very first episode, or it was like at the beginning of the series. I don't think it was like the very first episode, but Yuga was riding his bike and Gakuto stopped him. No. Excuse me, it wasn't an episode, it was the opening. He was running down the hallway, Gakuto stopped him, and then he had to walk back. But Yuga was riding down his bike, Gakuto said it was against the rules in the building, and then this is where we were kind of learning all of the different roles at Goha Corporation for the group. But Gakuto has a similar position to like he has as a president at the elementary school, which to me, this is just essentially a retrain of this Goha 7th Elementary School, but just the Goha Corporation building. That's what I strongly do believe it is, but other characters are going to have more roles than Gakuto. At least Gakuto feels like it's just him being the Goha 7th president, but just for Goha Corporation now, but not being a president. But Yuga obviously ignores him after that whole conversation with him about, not riding the bike in the hallway, because Yuga was in a rush to try and fix something. And then we see Gakuto run in with Umiko, which was the first time we've seen her in a while. I think the last time we saw her was briefly at the beginning of the last arc, where she was kind of like talking about the whole situation with the robot in space and all that stuff. That was the last time we saw Umiko, and we kind of see her working on the lights in the Goha building and doing a very, very poor job at it. I mean, she looks like she changed a light bulb, which at least she did that part, but she put back an old light bulb that she took out, which essentially did not fix the problem whatsoever, because you saw the light even flickering, and she seemed pissed. Like, she seemed like she did not want to be there, and that surprised Gakuto as she ends up walking off the screen. And then we see where the other characters are at right now. We find out that Roman is the chef at Goha Corporation, which is a big mistake. I don't know how the hell she got that role, and we kind of see why it's a bad decision, because at first she looks like she's making a really cool meal, but then when she finishes the meal, yeah, that's something I do not want to touch, if I'm going to be completely honest. But they have that little bit of a comedic scene there. They run into Umiko again, which is still trying to do her job, but obviously she's not doing a very good job. And then we find out Luke's position at the Goha Corporation building, but I guess there wasn't an actual role there. So Luke decides, instead of taking any of the other options that were potentially there, or who knows, maybe there wasn't actually a spot for him at Goha Corporation, but whatever the case would be, he decides to create his own new place at the Goha Corporation. And at first, Gakuto doesn't really agree with this and says, you know, you can't really just do something like this, but Luke disagrees and decides to continue on what he's doing and making his new office. And then to the right of him, we see Umiko plugging in a whole bunch of stuff that was going to be in his office, but she does it in a very poor way, in a very dangerous way for that matter, because she decides to get one of those extension cords that you can plug multiple things in there and put a little adapter into them, where if you put an adapter into it, you can have extra room to be able to plug in stuff. Like you can have one that has like 2 or 3 different outlet spots that you can put, which would originally be one. And she decides to plug everything into there, which is highly dangerous because it can set electrical fire, and that's what ends up happening because she plugs in so many stuff into these outlets that it ends up actually going on fire and causing an electrical fire. But obviously she doesn't care and just walks off after that, and Gakuto finally breaks there. He thinks this is the last straw and decides to confront Umiko, and she is just an absolute slob when we actually go and meet her in her room that she's staying at. Like, everything is just on the floor. It's just a complete mess, and she just frankly does not care. And Gakuto decides to challenge her to a duel, and if he wins, she has to fix her behavior at Goha Corporation, and she decides to accept it. But that's not the only thing that happens during this whole scene, because this scene right here, and this is kind of a benefit for me doing these episode reviews so late, which I'm just going to say this right now, I'm going to try to do better at doing these reviews at a more newer time, at a more recent time of when the episode came out. But a lot of stuff ended up coming out. In fact, you guys probably saw on the channel that there was a lot of card game news that came out, and I really wanted to do it, so this kind of just went to the back burner a little bit because I wanted to get better at doing the card game videos, so that's why those took a priority over this. So that's why this review is coming out a little bit later than expected. But during that time, people broke down this scene to death, whether it was Reddit, whether it was Twitter, Instagram, probably YouTube. I didn't check anything on YouTube, unfortunately. I didn't have enough time to be able to do that. But all these different places broke down this scene for one moment during this episode, where instead of saying her blub catchphrase, because obviously these Ko's have their own catchphrase, she says the catchphrase of Chicago for some reason before she decides to correct herself, which is the second time that there has been a slip up with these characters, because the last time this happened was with Sweets Kakako, when she mentioned Chicago when no one even was talking about her. They mentioned Sorako, which was true, and she mentioned that, but no one did mention Chicago because Kaizo and Sebastian were the only 2 characters that knew of Chicago's existence, and guess what? None of them were there, so it made no sense for her to say it whatsoever. And this has caused the internet to go and dig this scene to death, even noticing like some things, like I think she was like reading a book or something like that that had noodles and stuff like that, like essentially having a counterpart to every other one of the Ko's. And essentially what this did, it brought people to the attention that this is just one character instead of 2 characters, because this has been a debate that's been going on for a while now of whether or not these characters are the same or not. And because of this scene right here, this puts people at the belief that they are going to be the same character. And do I like that or not? if I'm going to be completely honest, I don't really care. When it came to this whole debate, I was on neither side, if I was going to be completely honest. I did not care if they were the same character or if they were, a different set of characters. And you might be wondering, well, why wouldn't you care? That matters a lot if they are the same character or not. But is it really, though? Because I feel like the overall question is still the same no matter which way you look at it, and it's why does these co-characters come out after every time a co participates in a duel, and why do these co-characters keep switching? The only difference that I guess you could say between this question is the way you say it, because if it's the same character, then why is this one character making multiple personalities, and every time she participates in a duel, why does she continue to switch personalities and decks for that matter? But if it's the same character, then why does one of these new co-characters has to come in and step up for the previous co-character after she participates in a duel? So the question is still the same no matter which way you look at it. It's just how you ask the question is different, and that's why I was never a part of this whole debate, because frankly I don't think it matters in hindsight. But obviously that's just my opinion and you can disagree on that, and that's completely fine. I might just be the weird one out of the group, but I would like to know your guys' thoughts on that, and what side were you are in the whole code debate. Did you think they were the same character, or did you think they were different characters, or were you on my side and you just really did not care if they were the same character or not? Would love to know your guys' thoughts on that. But she decides to accept the duel with Gakuto, and then we get the duel of the episode, which is Gakuto versus Umiko. General thoughts on the duel. I thought the duel was okay. The big things that to note from this duel is Umiko shows her deck for the first time, which was not surprised by the deck at all. It was a fish type deck. Well, I shouldn't say fish type because there actually is a fish type in the OCG TCG, but it was a deck based around fish, but they were actually with light themes, obviously, to kind of fit with her thing of being a lantern fish. So she's having these different fish-like creatures that actually have, electrical opponents. And like one of her monsters was an octopus with, electrical wires, which maybe this is just me, but did anyone kind of get a resemblance to one of the appliancer monsters that Robopi uses, the Link 2 monster? Maybe it's just me, but it looked very similar, or the concept, I should say, was very similar in the terms of it being an octopus-like creature with like wires coming out of it. So that was kind of cool, like little notice there, and I kind of liked that monster if I was going to be completely honest. But also, we got to see Gakuto's fusion in this episode as well, which no one was surprised about that whatsoever, because they decided to spoil that in the preview, which I think was the first time that they've done something like that, where they've actually spoiled the new Ace monster. Well, no, I take that back, because the last one we got for 67, that one kind of spoiled it in showing like the summoning of the new monster. We didn't see the full monster design, but we saw him like getting created. So I guess you can say that technically counts, but they don't really do it that often, but they just blatantly showed this new card. But we also got to see Umiko's new fusion, which not really surprised about that, if I'm going to be completely honest. At the end of episode 67, when they say like, these different like pieces of the satellite were scattered everywhere, I had the strong belief that everyone was just going to get a fusion card. I mean, it made sense, and this looks like it's going to be the case. I mean, literally in the first duel that we see of this arc, literally Umiko, who you wouldn't think would have a fusion card, has a fusion card. And the one thing I will say though from this duel that I was shocked about was that they didn't kind of mention about how there could be fusion monsters with only one effect, because up to that point we only saw fusion monsters that had multi-choice effects and new types. But obviously Umiko's monster doesn't have that property. It's like the generic fusion monsters where they will only have one effect and have one of the original types. In this form it was the thunder type, which was her entire deck, which did not predict that at all. I thought it was going to be either an aqua or fish type deck, but thunder makes the most sense as well. They kind of fit with the whole like light and electrical thing, so that makes complete sense. But yeah, we got to see her new fusion card. She tries to use it to defeat Gakuto. It doesn't work. And then it leads to Gakuto ultimately defeating Umiko with his own new fusion, which was a well-deserved win for Gakuto. He definitely needed this win after the poor performance from the last arc where he really didn't do anything other than the fact that he dueled against Euron once and lost. That was literally his highlights of the last arc. That's literally all he did in that arc, was just duel against Euron and lost. So this was definitely a well-deserved win for Gakuto, and that's essentially it for the duel against Gakuto and Umiko. The only thing I guess that I need to mention was that also throughout the duel, she just showed how lazy she was in this episode. If it wasn't for her changing old light bulbs with other old light bulbs into even her own room looking like it was a pigsty, she did not care about this duel whatsoever, or she was just very lazy with this duel because she wasn't reading her cards. Multiple times throughout the duel, she talked about off-topic topics that really didn't pertain to the duel, and probably the worst of it all, but probably my favorite moment of the duel, was that when Gakuto summoned his fusion monster, she makes the statement, "Oh, so this is a fusion monster," even though literally on her last turn, she summoned a fusion monster, and even Ronze and Rinosuke even pointed out, like, you fusion summoned, how the hell did you forget what a fusion monster looked like? So that was probably my favorite part of the duel, because it was so stupid and so dumb of her to forget or to be that lazy that she didn't even realize she had her own fusion on her field, which, again, that was just hilarious when that ended up happening. But after the duel, Gakuto and Umiko talked a little bit after that before she gave out one last weird face, which was another thing she did throughout the duel. She made weird faces kind of similar to how Kaizo did it, and she essentially left like the other co-characters, which means more than likely that we're going to be seeing a new co-character at some point, because this has been the same pattern. Every time a co-character disappears, a new one appears, and it's going to be very interesting to see what this next personality is going to be all about. But with that being said, that's going to be it for this episode review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your guys' thoughts on episode 69. Did you guys like the episode? Did you think the episode was okay? Or did you not really like this episode at all? Let me know your guys' thoughts on Flash Umiko, since we got to see a little bit more of her, and your thoughts on her character as a whole, and your guys' thoughts on the duel between Umiko and Gakuto. Would love to know all your guys' thoughts on this episode down below. But guys, that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.